Today I wanted to resurrect a project that I've had sitting around for well over 2 years. Oh, this is exciting. Very, very exciting. Got all the pieces here, some of which are filled, some of which are not. But of course I've learnt since then that I can bake epoxy sculpt, so I don't have to worry about that. One small thing before I get started. This is the old Shengsha 5x5 mechanism, and it's not something you're going to be seeing much more of in this series, as all of the puzzles that I have currently are the newer Shengsha 5x5s. So this is a bit of a dated mechanism, and if you see some things that look a little strange, that's the reason why. One day while building a 5x5 barrel, I sanded way too far down, and I just kept going until I bottomed out at the mechanism. I didn't know what to do with the final product, so I packed it all up and I just left it in storage. Because when I just finished the puzzle, I threw it all into the one container and left it aside, I'm not really sure if all of the pieces are here, so I had to sort through them all and count them to make sure that there were enough pieces to actually make this puzzle. And also while I was at it, I decided to sort the pieces into those that needed to be repaired and those that were fine as they were. After I determined which pieces needed to be filled, I got a blade out and I cleaned up all of the sharp edges, that way I could fill the pieces more easily. And now that I'd finished finishing up all of those pieces, now it was time to fill them up with the epoxy sculpt. I mixed up enough epoxy sculpt to use on all of the pieces, and one by one I pressed it into each of them. I was trying to be as sparing as possible as I didn't want to spend too much time refining the shape on the belt sander. Most of the pieces were already where I wanted them to be, and I pretty much just wanted to copy that curve for the rest of them. And after all the pieces were filled, and after about 10 minutes in the oven, everything was hardened. Now the observant of you may have noticed that there was no core inside that container, and the reason for that was I used the whole middle layer for a 2x5x5 that I built a little later on. So I had to remake that whole layer, so I got a couple spare pieces out that matched the Shengsha mechanism that I was working with, and then I just kinda clipped off all of the cubies and put them together. I didn't have to fill any of these pieces because I was sanding them down so far. And now that all the pieces were finished and hardened, I scraped off all of the flashing and anything that would prevent me from reassembling the puzzle, and then I slowly put it together. Even at this rough assembly stage, it was already looking wildly different to the regular 5x5 barrel. Those thin middle layers reminded me of something like a higher order barrel where they often get pretty thin near the top. But the only way I was going to know for sure what this puzzle looked like was by taking it over to my belt sander and sanding everything down to a final smooth cylinder. With the final shape sorted out, I went into first turns to make sure that this puzzle actually functioned before I started finishing it up. I was happy to see that it actually turned pretty well despite having extremely tight tensions, and it also shapeshifted, which I expected, but I didn't expect it to shapeshift so well. But anyways, it was looking really good, so it was time to get the stickers off and get finishing all of these pieces. Now I wasn't going to sticker this puzzle up in this build purely because I just didn't have the time to cut the stickers for it, but I was going to finish up all of the pieces and give it a good paint job. The finishing process for all of the pieces on pretty much any puzzle that I make hasn't really changed in the past few years. I got a nail file out and I knocked off all of the sharp edges, and then once I was done with that, I took the pieces over to some Scotch-Brite and I just rubbed it down a little more, removing all of the sharp edges and burrs that I missed. After all the pieces were rounded and finished off, I reassembled the barrel and I was really happy with how it was looking. I was a little dismayed that the center layer had some issues with the centerpieces. I'll have to fix that at a later time, but I was still going to go ahead with finishing and painting up this puzzle. I took it over to my painting stool and I gave it a couple coats of black spray paint. And here it is, the final puzzle looks actually really incredible. I'm surprised that the middle layer's pieces are so much wider than the pieces of the layer between the middle and the top. I think that's kind of weird, especially while it's turning. I mean, they still do turn just fine, but I suppose it would be kind of difficult to align the layers. So I might have to think about what kind of sticker scheme I'm going to give this puzzle when I do eventually sticker it up. But for now, I'm glad that this puzzle's done. But anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time.